At number 10 is X-24. In the dark and twisted multiverse of comic book adaptations, we've seen our fair share of alternate versions of our beloved characters, but in the film Logan, this sinister creation was engineered to be the ultimate unaliving machine, a nightmarish mirror image of Wolverine himself. Unlike the brooding and complex Logan we know, X-24 is a ruthless berserker devoid of any moral compass. See, he wasn't plagued by inner demons or a sense of duty. He was a pure force of destruction. And what made him even more terrifying was his relentless pursuit of Laura, or X-23, who shared Wolverine's blood. Every time X-24 appeared on screen, a wave of anxiety washed over myself, knowing that this unrelenting monster would stop at nothing to achieve its grisly objectives. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate it. At number 9 is Zombieverse Wolverine. In the eerie expanse of the multiverse, we stumble upon a spine-chilling variant of Wolverine, who's a zombie. Venture into Earth Z, or Earth 2149, a nightmarish realm in which this gruesome iteration, Wolverine's fate, takes a sinister twist as he, along with a select other few heroes, feast upon the remains of the cosmic entity Galactus. But it doesn't stop there. The unholy banquet bestows upon zombie Wolverine the dreaded power cosmic. Damn, picture it. The relentless savagery of Wolverine as a zombie, fueled with the limitless might of the cosmos. It's a ghastly unison that transforms Logan into a nightmarish force, a walking apocalypse with claws and a cosmic energy at his disposal. This incarnation of Wolverine sends shivers down the spine, reminding us that within the multiverse, terror knows no bounds. At number 8 is the Lord of the Vampires. This spine-chilling incarnation of Logan emerged from the pages of the What If series, specifically in Volume 2, Issue 24. Here, a fateful turn of events sees Storm choosing to stay by Dracula's side during the X-Men's clash with the infamous Vampire Lord. The consequences were world-altering, as Wolverine and his fellow heroes fell victim to capture and transformation. Yet the adamantium-laced warrior's indomitable will proved way too powerful for Dracula's control. In a gruesome twist, Wolverine overcame the Vampire Lord, seizing the throne and becoming the new Lord of the Vampires. Picture Wolverine with fangs, ruling over legions of bloodsuckers, and capable of enslaving anyone with a single bite. It's a nightmarish blend of clawed ferocity and a moral bloodlust that would haunt even the most fearless of souls. At number 7 is Cancerverse Wolverine. Cancerverse Wolverine is a denizen of Earth 10011, remains a shadowy figure in the Marvel Universe. In this eerie reality known as the Cancerverse, the Grim Reaper has been utterly obliterated, and in the absence of the unalive, paradoxically, it gave birth to a cosmic nightmare. Cancerverse Wolverine's appearance alone is enough to send shivers down your spine. In a world where mortality is non-existent, life spirals into a grotesque spectacle, a chilling reflection of the importance of balance in the universe. Because in this twisted realm, even a hero like Wolverine becomes a harbinger of terror, a reminder that the natural order of things, no matter how unsettling, always has its rightful place. At number 6 is Old Man Logan. Old Man Logan is a haunting iteration of Wolverine, emerging from Earth 807128. In this chilling reality, the claws of tragedy run deep. See, Logan was once a hero who now carries the crushing weight of guilt upon his adamantium-laced shoulders. Mysterio's sinister dissipation led him down a path of unwitting euthanization, annihilating his fellow X-Men. Time catapults us into a future where Logan has abandoned his iconic alias, opting simply for his first name to escape the specter of his past. But destiny refuses to release his grip. Logan attempts to evade heroics, settling into a family life, yet peril relentlessly pursues him. When the ruthless Hulk gang eliminates his loved ones over the late protection money, Logan's dormant savagery ignites. The descent into vengeance becomes an inescapable plunge, culminating in a gory reckoning that liberates his world from the clutches of the deranged Pappy Banner and his nightmarish clan. In the desolate landscape of Old Man Logan's reality, even heroes succumb to darkness, making it one of the most spine-tingling alternate Wolverines in the multiverse. And at number 5, my personal favorite is Old Man Venom. Enter the Venomverse, where unimaginable transformations await. In this universe, we get to see Old Man Logan devoured by a venom-infested T-Rex. But here's the twist. The symbiote decides that Logan is a superior host and merges with him. The result is Venom Wolverine, or as I like to call him, Old Man Venom, a character oozing with insanity, ethics thrown out the window, and an utter disregard for consequences. Sure, he might have a laundry list of symbiote vulnerabilities, making him marginally less formidable than your typical regenerating Logan, but the sheer terror he instills is undeniable. Venom Wolverine is a monstrous fusion of two iconic characters, delving into a spine tingling combination of ferocity and chaos. Next time you delve into alternate realities, keep an eye out for this hair-raising incarnation of Wolverine. At number 4 is Wolverine Noir. In the shadowy realms of this alternate universe, we stumble upon Jim Logan, a character shrouded in mystery and intrigue. This noir iteration of Wolverine takes us on a journey through the Marvel Noirverse, offering a distinctive twist on the iconic mutant. In this iteration, Logan isn't a berserker on the battlefield, but a detective navigating the murky waters of crime. It's a fitting role for a man with heightened senses and a knack for tracking. Wolverine Noir paints a gritty picture of reminiscent of classic noir films, amplifying the eerie ambience that defines this universe. This version delves into Wolverine's past, mirroring the harrowing narrative from his origin series. Raised by a fervently religious father, Jim's childhood is the haunting tale of sermons and strife, shaping his path into the detective he becomes. So while we've seen Logan in countless forms, Jim Logan's chilling incarnation stands out as one of the most intriguing and unsettling alternate versions of this iconic character. At number 3 is Phoenix Wolverine. In the realm of eerie alternate Wolverines, the incarnation known as Phoenix Logan takes a chilling spot on our list. Picture a grim future where Thor ascends to the All-Father status and Loki, the ever-malevolent trickster, decimates humanity just to torment his brother. In this apocalyptic landscape, Wolverine, after his own demise, becomes a new vessel for the awe-inspiring Phoenix Force. With this cosmic power coursing through his adamantium-laced veins, Wolverine exhibits an array of mind-bending abilities, even at one point going as far as to save Loki from the formidable Celestials. However, the terror takes on a different twist when a future iteration of Doctor Doom crosses this Wolverine's path, obliterating him. Yet thanks to the Phoenix Force, his demise is merely a minor setback. To secure Doctor Doom's defeat, Logan willingly sacrifices himself, channeling his power through Thor's mighty Mjolnir in the relentless battle. At number 2 is Akihiro. Akihiro, also known as Daken or Fang, is a chilling alternate version of Wolverine. During the Dark Reign storyline, when Norman Osborn took control of the comics, Daken emerges as a sinister counterpart. See, Osborn had formed Hammer and the Dark Avengers, a team comprised of rebranded villains as Avengers replacements. While Osborn attempted to recruit original Avengers, most of them declined. Daken, however, joined as Dark Wolverine. Akihiro might not currently be villainous, but during that time, he was a bona fide baddie. What makes him terrifying in the series is his lack of a moral code, even compared to his father, who isn't known for his strength. Daken, like Wolverine, is a highly skilled fighter and assassin, groomed from childhood to be a lethal weapon for Romulus against Logan. This alternate version of Wolverine is a dark reflection of the iconic hero. And at number 1 is Dark Claw. Dark Claw, a fusion of Marvel's Wolverine and DC's Batman from the Amalgam Universe, is undeniably one of the scariest alternate versions of Wolverine. Imagine the brooding intensity of Batman mixed with the raw, animalistic ferocity of Wolverine. It's a chilling combination, and Dark Claw inherits Bruce Wayne's wealth and tragic backstory, ensuring that he's a complex and deeply haunted character. But what truly sets him apart is his adamantium-coated skeleton and healing factor borrowed from Wolverine, obviously. This mending of two iconic, fear-inducing heroes creates a formidable force. Dark Claw embodies the fear of the night, blending the relentless pursuit of justice with the untamed power of Wolverine's regenerative abilities and his claws. Crossing paths with Logan Wayne would send shivers down anyone's spine.
Say what you will about X-Men Forever, but it did give us a rather unique version of Rogue. Rogue in this universe still had her absorption abilities, and when the X-Men were split into two factions thanks to the betrayal of Storm in this story, Rogue was teamed up with Gambit and Nightcrawler. Now Nightcrawler got a call from an old friend who needed help in Jackson, Mississippi, and Rogue offered to go along since she was from that area. Now when they got to the address, they found Mystique, who had actually faked the call, and in anger, Rogue attacked her for always interfering with her life, and she fell unconscious after hitting into a gas tank, which caused an explosion. Now when Nightcrawler got to her, she was not breathing, and so he gave her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. She lived, but something had happened. Instead of just getting Kurt's powers, Rogue and Nightcrawler had actually both completely switched powers and appearances. While she initially hated her new blue appearance and tail, not to mention only having teleportation powers, she did eventually get to hang out with Spider-Man and get more accustomed to her new qualities, but then the whole thing got cancelled and we will never know more. Now, Rogue is ordinarily one of the most powerful mutants in the 616 world. Her ability to absorb other people's powers makes her almost unbeatable in battle. However, in 1602, Witch Hunter Angela, a 17th century version of Rogue named Anna Maria, discovers that her absorption abilities are useless against the Enchantress, who uses magic to possess witch breeds, aka mutants. Without a teacher, Rogue's powers are pretty much completely untamed, and due to how deadly her absorption powers are, she was kept locked away in a tower. Well, that, and she was being used as a pawn in a twisted game between the Enchantress and a warrior called Angela. Now, whilst Angela had made it her mission to eradicate any witch breed she met, she took pity on Anna Maria as she saw her as a sympathetic and tragic character. The Enchantress, though, eventually possessed Anna, and Angela had to bring her down, only for Anna Maria to be eventually resurrected later on. On Earth 616, Rogue can absorb others' powers, which gives her near limitless potential. However, her powers are dampened by control. Even though she trained under Charles Xavier for years, Rogue's control of her absorption abilities has never been that strong. But in Exiles number 99, writer Chris Claremont imagines a version of Rogue where control was never a problem. The reality hopping team known as the Exiles come across a young mutant named Anna Raven, who, like her Earth 616 twin, has absorption powers. However, this version of Rogue only absorbs through her hands as opposed to her entire body. This version can also recall the powers of every person she's ever touched, making her pretty darn capable. She also came from a rich family but rebelled, choosing to become an outlaw and master thief. Now, whilst breaking into a vault one day, she was found by her world's Iron Man, but was saved by Morph of the Exiles. Joining the team, she dove straight into their mission of fixing broken realities. X-Men: The End takes place 10 to 15 years in the future of an Earth known as Earth 41001. As you might guess from the name, the X-Men faced their end when several of their deadliest foes coordinated their attacks on them. Gambit and Rogue in this world had been running the occasional mission for the X-Men, but were still apart from them, living as a married couple and raising their two children, Olivier and Rebecca. Now, Mr. Sinister manipulated Gambit into handing over the children to him, so in response, Rogue went to the Neverland camps and freed her children, but she was unfortunately wiped out by Mr. Sinister, who stabbed her in the back while he posed as Gambit, which is quite surprising given the fact that this Rogue still had the abilities of Carol Danvers. But moving over to the House of M reality, created by the Scarlet Witch that saw mutants becoming the dominant species of the Earth, Rogue's parents lost their lives when she was very young. Because of that, she spent some time in an orphanage, but when her mutant powers inevitably manifested, she earned the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D., which in this reality was run by Sebastian Shaw and allied tightly with Magneto, who ruled the Earth. Mystique was sent to recruit Rogue, and as usual, the two formed a bond. So much so that Mystique also adopted Rogue here as well. Rogue was trained well in the use of her powers until she was able to join the elite squad of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents known as the Red Guard, alongside Wolverine and her adoptive brother, Nightcrawler. In the Ultimate Universe, Rogue, who in this universe is named Marion Carlisle, was found and experimented on by Weapon X when she was still a young child. She was subsequently sent on many dangerous operations and missions. When the X-Men made a public appearance on a television show, Rogue was used by Weapon X to absorb some of Colossus's knowledge about their mansion's secrets. She reported said secrets to Weapon X, who subsequently captured the team. Now, the Brotherhood of Mutants would later rescue all the captured mutants, including Rogue, and after Weapon X was defeated, Rogue stayed with the Brotherhood, and when the President of the United States ordered the Ultimates to capture all Brotherhood-affiliated mutants, including Rogue, she surrendered peacefully and was offered amnesty in exchange for her joining the X-Men, where she had a brief relationship with Iceman. Now, later on, she was kidnapped by Gambit, whose employers gave Rogue a special suit that they developed with which she could control her powers. However, when Fenris, that organization, decided that Gambit was now useless and wanted him wiped out, he and Rogue fought them off together. Rogue then quit the X-Men, rejoining the team after Gambit was taken out and she had gained his powers. During Magneto's attack on New New York, Rogue permanently absorbed the powers of Juggernaut, gaining his super strength, and she would eventually find herself living on the island of Utopia. In Infinity Countdown, Captain Marvel #1, the Prime Marvel Universe Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, went to visit alternate reality Earth 9289 using the power of the Reality Stone, since the gem linked her to the wielders of the gem in other realities. Now, funnily enough, the wielder of the gem in this reality was Anna Marie. In this reality, when Rogue infamously touched Miss Marvel to absorb her powers, Carol grabbed onto her arm and didn't let go. In addition to Carol's Kree DNA glitching out Rogue's powers, the prolonged contact caused each of these two to end up absorbing the powers, memories, and personality of the other completely. Now, Rogue sought out Professor X's help, but instead of her normal story, afterwards she went to space and as a consequence of an encounter with the Brood, gained the power boost to become binary. She looks awesome as binary, even if she doesn't look very different compared to Carol Danvers as the character. When Earth's heroes were taken to a distant planet by the Beyonder to perform in the Secret Wars, it was only because of the scientific mind of Reed Richards that they could return home. However, in the reality shown in What If number 114, Reed actually passed away, leaving both heroes and villains stuck there. Now, over time, both parties decided to put their differences aside and just settle down. Rogue became romantically involved with Captain America of all people, only it's important to note that it wasn't really Rogue anymore who was in charge of her body, but again, the Carol Danvers personality took over. Carol, or Rogue, being able to control Rogue's absorption powers, had a kid with Captain America who they named Sarah. Their daughter had taken on Carol's powers, but she also could pick up Thor's hammer and often donned her father's shield as well, taking the codename Crusader. As is often the case with big names in Marvel and DC Comics, some of the coolest alternate versions of characters came from the big Amalgam event, where characters from Marvel and characters from DC were merged together to create entirely new characters with aspects of both. For the character of Rogue, she was amalgamated with the largely unknown DC character Gypsy, and went by the name Anna Marie Reynolds, aka Runaway. Despite being a fusion of the two, Runaway only really showed off her Rogue powers, abilities, and memory absorption powers in tandem with her flight and super strength, meaning she basically just had the same powers as Rogue, who had absorbed Carol Danvers' powers. Now, Runaway was a former member of the Judgment League Avengers of Romani descent, who also curiously spoke with a strong Texan accent. And lastly, in 1994's What If second series number 66, while she and Mystique are on their way to Rikers Island to bust out the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, the pair run into the Avengers, and having already absorbed both Captain Marvel and Captain America's abilities, Rogue drains the mighty Thor to the point of his demise, and she proceeds to wreak havoc. She takes out the Vision and frees her comrades in arms, only to accidentally take them out too. After the Blob makes an ill-advised pass at her, she accidentally knocks him clean out of the plane they're in before exploding it and wiping out everyone on board, including Mystique. In her emotionally distraught state, she is approached by Loki, who convinces her that they need to attack Asgard. She agrees. When the time comes for her to lay the final blow on Odin, the sight of Odin's genuine grief at Thor's passing helps Rogue to access the residual memories of Thor in her psyche. With Thor explaining that he was an ideal as well as a person, Rogue was able to access the full powers of Thor. She then turns on the trickster god and defeats him before taking up the mantle of the new God of Thunder.
Professor X has had a lot of adventures across the multiverse, although I will say his alternate versions tend to either meet a tragic fate in most realities or otherwise just see him turn evil. In this reality, Charles and Magneto are not the ones to become Onslaught, but instead Jean and Magneto are. Like many other versions of Chuck that exist across the multiverse, this one dies earlier on, which causes events in this reality to splinter off and change. In the fight against Magneto, Charles ends up dead, and it is when this happens that Jean's latent and supreme powerful psychic abilities spark. This happens, of course, because Charles was the one who had put up barriers in Jean's mind to protect her from this awesome power that she has. When he dies, the barriers basically go with him. Jean is the one who ends up shutting down Magneto's mind, and as a result, the two psyches merge to create this universe, Earth 696's version of Onslaught. This version of Charles and Jean and Onslaught first appeared in original X-Men issue number 1, which only came out last year in 2023. Who would you like to see combine combined together to give us an onslaught, and what do you think would be different about that? A truly nasty version of Charles, this alternate version is known as Herr Xavier. In this reality, known as Earth 597, the Germans instead won World War II, which changes things quite a bit. The Professor X we see here becomes a villain who is responsible for taking out Angel and Beast. Instead of the X-Men, we have the xmen, which is made up of some of our standard X-Men members that we're familiar with from Earth 616. And we also have their opposing team, Lightning Force, which is also made up of different characters who parallel the current members of the Excalibur team. This version of Charles first appeared in the Excalibur one-shot Excalibur Weird War 3. On Earth 12, all heroes, even mutant heroes, are basically treated like celebrities, Professor X included. This version of Charles hails from the same reality as Calvin Rankin from the multiversal reality-hopping Exiles team. In fact, Charles was actually Calvin Rankin, aka Mimic's mentor on Earth 12, before he went off and was recruited to join the Exiles. In this reality, Calvin ended up going on to lead the X-Men thanks to Professor X's mentorship. When Blink heads to this reality to return Calvin's body after his death during his time serving on the Exiles team, this version of Professor X actually offers Blink a place with his own X-Men. Unfortunately, Blink was called to help save another reality, and so she could not accept Charles's offer. I love visiting the 1602 reality. Here, Professor X is known as Carlos Javier. He would end up running a school that sought to find and recruit Witchbreed, which are like mutants kind of in the 1602 reality. The 1602 reality takes place in that very same year that it gets its name from, while also being known in terms of its designated reality number as Earth 311. This reality's creation resulted from Captain America being banished, sent through time by Purple Man to be lost so that he would become MIA, and to avoid the fallout from the hero's destruction, which would then of course have made Cap a martyr, a symbol for the people that Purple Man was oppressing to rally around. This was after Purple Man had basically come to rule the world, or a version of it anyways. As a result, the past was changed and Marvel's heroes started appearing sooner in comparison to when they showed up in the Earth 616 reality, in terms of our timelines. Kane, Marco, and Professor X end up becoming friends in this reality, often known as MC2. It's believed that they share the same origin as their Earth 616 counterparts, but instead Juggernaut ended up reforming later on in life. Actually kinda like what's been happening recently in the comics with Juggernaut. This version of Charles made his first appearance in a flashback in the Wild Thing series in issue number 5. Wild Thing is a series that follows the adventures of the daughters of Logan and Elektra. In the MC2 reality, aka Earth 982, you see we get to explore what the world could be like if superheroes were basically allowed to age, retire, and settle down. This is also where Spider-Girl comes from. This one is pretty great, but also pretty goofy in some respects. In this world and what if story, we answer the question, what if Professor X had become the Juggernaut? In case you were wondering, we would get an extremely beefy version of Charles here. Honestly, I do think this story is pretty interesting too. When Kane was about to touch the gem of Sidorak, instead, Charles pushes him out of the way and he accidentally comes into contact with it. This grants him the powers of the Juggernaut, but also, like Kane, he gets trapped in the cave following the cave-in that ensues. When he finally emerges as the Juggernaut, he'll face off against Magneto, who is threatening the United Nations, and he'll ultimately beat him and then convince Magneto's team, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, to become the X-Men and work with and for Charles. With this X-Men team, Juggernaut would in essence conquer the world, protecting mutants but, not really caring so much about the fate of humans. Eventually, the X-Men and Magneto work together to overthrow Charles and send him hurtling through space. This all goes down in the second series of What If in issue number 13 if you wanted to check it out. This version of Charles, also known as MODOK, hails from the Age of Apocalypse reality, or AOA. AOA, aka Earth 295, was created as a result of Charles Xavier's death happening. This happening early also puts events in motion that basically allow Apocalypse to seize power, with him going on to rule the world, hence why we call it Age of Apocalypse. So if Charles is dead here, how does he become MODOK? Well, this specific version of Chuck is not actually the original version, but is instead a clone, or at least a clone of Xavier's brain, who apparently has no will of his own, and he's MODOK. It looks great. Looks like MODOK to me. This version of Professor X hails from the alternate reality of Earth 804, as glimpsed briefly in What If issue number 20 from the first What If comic series. Here we see the answer to the question, what if the Avengers had fought the Kree-Skrull War without Rick Jones? Unlike many other realities, Charles actually doesn't die here, but Rick Jones does. Charles also doesn't even become evil here, how cool. And the events here actually force Charles to take a more prominent role in this story, where he ends up as a leader for Earth and all of its heroes heroes in their fight against the Kree, who are basically attempting to conquer the planet. This version of Charles Xavier hails from the Mutant X reality. Havoc gets transported to this reality after he seemingly dies in the comics. Instead though, his psyche was basically like thrown through the multiverse and into the body of another Havoc in another reality. This Havoc had seemingly just died when the Earth 616 version of the character entered his mind and his body, allowing him to live on. Earth 616 Havoc would go on to live basically a whole life in the Mutant X reality, meeting tons of alternate versions of the 616 characters, including Madeline Pryor, who would become his wife and whom he would also have a son with. What is it with Havoc and having children that exist solely in alternate realities? That is a weird thing that Havoc has. He like gets to know them and then he's like, anyways, back to 616. Here, Havoc was the sole Summers brother who lived as well. Professor X was one of the characters from this reality, and obviously we're going to talk about him. Xavier becomes a villain in the Mutant X reality known as Earth 1298 after being corrupted by the Shadow King. Yeah, this version of Charles is one of the evil ones. He goes on to team up with Sinister at one point in a plot to take the power of all of Earth's telepaths for himself. Pretty evil. This plot ends up actually being so evil, so dastardly, so deadly, that Sinister even turns on Xavier, attempting to stop him. You know your plot is evil when Mr. Sinister's like, you know what, actually, I think I'm gonna stop you there. This is just a fun little goofy one, and I feel like a really fun way to end this video. In this universe, the X-Men are instead known as the Rexmen. Here, they're all doggos. This appearance of Charles comes from one of the little short stories seen in Millennial Visions. Always a fun and bizarre, just comic collection of stories to revisit. This story was titled Universe Rex. Here, Professor Rex's Rex Dogs team includes dog versions of Colossus, Bishop, Storm, Gambit, Wolverine, and Banshee. Wild.
Gambit, the Cajun sensation. He is a lot of people's favorite X-Man, and he's certainly one of mine. But what's he like in alternate realities? After multiple bodily injuries, Gambit and the X-Men belonging to the alternate reality of Earth 1011 began to replace their bodies with cybernetic parts. Eventually, this led to their entire bodies being replaced after their original bodies aged beyond use. Each X-Men downloaded their consciousness into cybernetic bodies designed after their original costumes. Turns out, that isn't really a terribly great idea. Their cybernetic brains began to become overcrowded with too much information, which led to their mental faculties basically breaking, leaving only the goal to save mutant kind as their primary directive. Because of this, they became the X-Sentinels, and in a twist of what we are used to with Sentinels, they started to hunt humans, leaving only mutants safe. The new Sun is an alternate Gambit that most Gambit fans do know about, and that's because he is Remy who reached his full potential. His parents were paid by the government project Alpha 1 to have a child based on their genetic potential. The child was raised by Alpha 1 and trained in the use of his powers before he even had them, so that by the time they manifested, he was able to escape the facility where he was being held. New Sun had control over kinetic energy at a molecular level. After being taken in by John Luke, Gambit learned that he was intended to become the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy to create heaven on Earth. Unfortunately, when he charged up his power in a special ritual, a chain reaction was started that caused everyone on Earth beside himself to completely burn up. The new Sun traveled to other universes hoping to prevent the same thing from happening there. Coming to the main Marvel universe, he first attempted to create a new world where everyone would eventually be transported to using the main reality's Gambit to help. But when he learned that his plan wasn't possible, he tried to take out Gambit, transporting both of them to his destroyed homeworld before he became a threat to the main universe's Earth world as well. One version of Gambit who comes pretty much entirely out of left field is the one from Earth 6706. This Gambit is Remy Mackenzie, and he is the firstborn son of an alternate Afro-Atlantean Prince Namor Mackenzie and his wife, Susan Storm, the Invisible Woman. So already this Remy is wildly different. Obviously, he has the Atlantean abilities passed down by his father, but from his mother, he has gained telekinesis strong enough to allow himself to fly and to lift heavy steel beams, while also gaining psionic force fields, which he has used to create hover discs and even a psionic sword. When the exiles visited this Earth, Gambit was excited about the chance for adventure with them, and he joined up. But after a few months with the team, he was called back home to take over his father's kingdom, as that version of Namor had been slain in battle. With the exiles' help, Gambit was able to defeat the rebels, and he united his Earth peacefully under his own rule. Experimenting with attempts to recreate the Captain Britain Britain Corps, Jamie Braddock created a pocket reality in which England was at war with Krakoa. The Betsy Braddock of this pocket reality had teamed up with the mutant team Excalibur, made up of Richter, Rogue, Jubilee, and of course, Gambit. Now, after escaping London with the help of Cape Pride, the group were confronted by Jamie Braddock, who revealed that he intended to make Betsy the first of a new Captain Britain Corps. Turns out that she was not a fan, and so a fight ensued. Now, after Betsy was struck down, this pocket reality then fractured again, and all 4 of the mutants from Excalibur were all offered an Amulet of Right, and all became versions of Captain Britain, creating a new Captain Britain Corps. X-Men in the End takes place 10 to 15 years in the future on an Earth known as Earth 41001. As you might guess from the name, the X-Men faced their end when several of their deadliest foes coordinated their attacks on them. Gambit and Rogue in this world had been running the occasional mission for the X-Men, but were still apart from them, living as a married couple and raising their 2 children, Oliver and Rebecca. Now, one of the villains, Mr. Sinister, had also put a target on these 2 kids, and in order to protect both his children and those of Cyclops and Emma Frost, Gambit took them kids and brought them to Sinister himself. This is when Sinister dropped the bombshell that Gambit was actually the 3rd Summers brother, as Mr. Sinister had created him years ago by mixing some of Cyclops' DNA with his own to act as the ultimate weapon against the mutant apocalypse. That's a lot to lay on a guy, and when Rogue lost her life against Sinister's forces, Gambit completely snapped, turned on Sinister together with Mystique, and once the villain was laid low, he actually took Sinister's place to try and undo some of the damage that he had done. Formerly an X-Men and good friend of their leader, Magneto, in the Age of Apocalypse reality, this Gambit left the team pretty heartbroken when Rogue fell for the wrinkly old Magneto. Gambit founded his own team, the Externals, and found some comfort and romance with the mutant Lila Cheney. Eventually, Magneto called on Gambit's help specifically because of Remy's teleporting girlfriend, Lila. Using Lila's power, Gambit and his team travel across the galaxy to steal a piece of the Macron crystal. But in order to take from the crystal, Gambit apparently had to sacrifice the love that he felt for Rogue and was granted a shard of the crystal. Having succeeded in their mission, the Externals returned to Earth only to be betrayed by one of their own. Now, after Apocalypse's defeat, Remy joined the X-Men to help them rebuild again. And for about a decade, Earth prospered. Eventually though, a reborn Apocalypse re-established his world order, and Gambit passed away fighting his minions to buy his true love, Rogue, and her fellow X-Men enough time to escape. What a roller coaster of emotion. In the regular Earth 616 reality, after the X-Men learned of Gambit's involvement in the mutant massacre, they felt pretty betrayed, but still they eventually forgave their teammate. But what if they didn't? In the reality shown in What If Volume 1, number 106, the revelation of his involvement drove a huge wedge between the X-Men and Gambit, with the founding member Archangel, formerly Angel, especially having a whole lot of hatred for the Cajun. It's kind of understandable though, since the mutant massacre is what caused Warren to first ever lose his wings. Eventually, Archangel hunted Gambit down and challenged him to a duel to the death, except during the fight, Remy stopped fighting back, correctly guessing that Archangel would realize that taking Remy's life wouldn't really solve anything. But no one thought about the mutant Marrow. She very much felt otherwise and took Gambit down, ramming one of her bone daggers into his chest. With his dying breath, Remy basically asked the X-Men to forgive her and end the cycle of violence. In the world of Marvel Noir, superheroes don't really exist in the same way they do on Earth 616. There are very few who have legit superpowers, and the mutants, who normally make up the X-Men, are actually a group of sociopathic teenagers recruited by discredited psychiatrist Charles Xavier, who ran the Xavier School for Exceptionally Wayward Youth in Westchester, New York in 1937. In this world, Gambit is just Remy LeBeau, an ally of Thomas Holloway, the vigilante known as Angel, and he is also the owner of the Creole Club, a casino and a nightclub. He was also a pretty bad dude and was not above resorting to physical altercations in order to retrieve his debts, which was actually his downfall. Remy had been harassing Wanda Magnus over unpaid debts, and that got him sent to the pearly gates by a vengeful Peter Magnus in retaliation. And in case you didn't pick up on it, that is Wanda and Pietro Maximoff of the Noir reality. In another alternate reality though, coming to us in the X-Men Forever world of Earth 161, the X-Men found their world forever change, with members dropping in and out and some even swapping their powers. One constant in all of that was Gambit, who turned into one of the group's most reliable mainstays. This version of the Cajun sensation was actually named Remy Picard instead of LeBeau. This version of Gambit replaced his flashy costume with dark shades, a black suit, a red shirt, and a tie. Also, in this world, instead of starting a relationship with Rogue, Jean-Luc Picard Jr. had a relationship with Kitty Pryde. And last up today, we end with a mystery. In the alternate future known as the XSE future, which is the timeline that the mutant Bishop comes from, there was an elderly man named LeBeau, who was also known as the Witness. The Witness was called that because he was said to have been the last person to have ever seen the X-Men before they were wiped out. Shortly after Bishop came to the present time, back in the day, he recognized Earth 616 Gambit as the same man, only around 60 to 80 years younger. That on its own is pretty interesting, but later on, the Witness also made an appearance in the present day, and he also revealed that he existed simultaneously in all timelines at once. But this leaves the mystery of who the Witness, aka LeBeau, really is. It could be that at some point Gambit's powers evolve into him becoming the Witness, or maybe the Witness is Gambit's future offspring. What do you guys think?
There are thousands of Magnetos across the multiverse. Some versions would shock even the biggest Magneto fan. There is a steampunk version of Magneto, and that is the coolest thing I have ever seen. He originates from Earth 20,329, or Steampunk Godworld. Love that name, we should make it into a theme park. Steampunk Godworld comes from Extreme X-Men Volume 2 and also the year 2012. This is the sort of world that could only come from the year of 2012. The world is ruled by mutant gods, and Charles Xavier is evil, and also his head is in a floating fishbowl. It's amazing. Magneto here goes by Magnus, and he has a mohawk. Kind of. It looks more like a Roman battle helmet. He looks great no matter what is on his head. He also wears a trench coat. Truly, this has gotta be like peak Magneto fashion here. Magnus seems to have the same powers as his 616 counterpart, but better style. I'm kidding, they're both beautiful in their own way. I'm not trying to start fights today. Him and Xavier created a world together that was a secret haven for science and tech and mutants, and all was well until it was discovered that Xavier was evil. Magneto had to end him for that one. Magsquito, the magnetic mosquito, is an actual character, if you can believe it. He originated in Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham, and that makes this make more sense, I think. Magsquito is the main enemy to the X-Bugs. You can probably guess who the X-Bugs are in the 616 universe. The X-Bugs find out about Magsquito throwing a bunch of metal around because though he is a mosquito, he still has powerful magnetism abilities. The X-Bugs assume the worst and they go to stop Magsquito. The thing is, Magsquito wasn't actually doing anything wrong here. He actually decided to leave evil in the past and open a junkyard to sell scrap metal. So all that metal throwing was just him at work contributing to society. The X-Bugs literally show up and ruin his day, but at least they look remorseful when they discover that he wasn't doing anything wrong and he was just vibing at work. Magsquito does eventually return to evil though when he is recruited to join a villain squad. He ends up arrested by Sheep for that one. Sheep is S.H.I.E.L.D. in this universe, by the way. The Bee yonder ended up transporting a bunch of heroes and villains off Earth to make them do animal secret wars known as Secret Furs. That's kind of the last time we see him. At first his outfit was more magnet themed. He wore red and blue and had a magnet on his head, but the last time we see him he is wearing the red and purple we've come to associate with Magneto. Magneto and Rogue as a romance is something we've all seen. Some of us wish we hadn't, but it did happen. That's not the only time the two have been close. They were once absorbed into one person. In X-Men Millennial Visions 2 or on Earth 1033, Roguenito was born. So Magneto finds out he has a few months left to live and he throws a temper tantrum all over New York. He starts a war downtown. That's not really what happened. In reality, he realized that he only had a few months left to secure the place of mutants in society and was willing to get there before his death by any means necessary. In an effort to stop the event, Rogue and the X-Men tried to absorb Magneto's powers into her life force so she could attempt to use his powers to stop the fight. She did not account for the sheer amount of traumatic memories he holds in his head, and it was so much she literally got overwhelmed and shut down. Magneto had an opening to take over her body, he took it. So now Magneto is chillin' in the body of a former lover and is back back, terrorizing the Earth, but as a woman. As a woman who is a member of the X-Men. That causes pretty much all the problems one might expect. Rogue Nito broke into the High Evolutionaries base in the Savage Land to attempt to find a disease or a virus that would be strong enough to wipe out humans and leave mutants in charge of the world. He did find the disease and it did eliminate a bunch of people, unfortunately. However, it didn't work out completely in his favor, as mutants were soon locked up so humans could find a cure. Magneto was still running loose in the Savage Land, so the X-Men that weren't captured went to fight her. We don't know how it ended. The Millennial Visions were just imagined futures, stories that would likely never make it to the page, but were fun for writers to explore, so there are lots of examples of interesting versions of the heroes in there. I like to think though that Rogue Nito lost that final battle. The X-Sentinel Magneto is real and he will hurt you. I mean, I'm assuming most of us are humans, so he'd probably want to hurt us anyway, but the Sentinel version of him is that times 10. This version is also from the X-Men Millennial Visions, but volume 1 this time. Earth 1011 is a world in which first, the X-Men seem to get along with Magneto, which is great. He is part of the team. The X-Men, though they are mutants, they can still get hurt most of the time. Injuries can be bounced back from, but as the X-Men get older, it's hard to heal and some injuries were too great. So to keep their bodies battle ready, if some part of them went down, it would be replaced with a cybernetic version. Eventually, their entire body was cybernetic and even their minds. The X-Men downloaded their consciousness into their bodies. This comic came out in 2000 and just 10 years later, humanity caught up. They actually did that with a real person, B-I-N-A if you are interested, but back to the mutants though. Their cybernetic bodies were designed to look like the suit of the mutants so that people would recognize them, knew they were on their side. The problem with these cybernetic brains is that they started to overflow with information and break down, leading to the team taking a page out of Magneto's book and existing with their one purpose they were built for, protecting mutant kind by any means necessary. And that meant terrorizing humans and hunting them down just to keep mutants safe. With all the demonic things Magneto has done in his life, it's only fair that he once had what looks like little devil horns on his helmet. Earth 928 exists in X-Men 2099, and it's responsible for maybe Devil Magneto? This Magneto is mentioned in a speech. The speech is about the rights of mutants and the rules of combat that go with it. This Magneto is assumed to have all the same powers of 616 Magneto plus what looks like 2 little horns. Magneto's helmet has taken on a lot of different shapes. Earth's 1191's Magneto helmet kind of looks like a scorpion? This world is thought to be more made up. It exists in the X-Men, The Times and Life of Lucas Bishop 3. Bishop is being told a story by his grandmother, so all the characters are drawn in the way a young Bishop might have imagined them. Toad is actually a toad, for example, and Magneto just looks weird. He still leads the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. In this imaginary Kid Bishop world, they were plotting to eliminate a mutant-fearing politician that wanted to, and did, pass anti-mutant laws. Him and the Brotherhood were of course stopped by the X-Men. It was a good thing because then humans started seeing that mutants weren't all evil. The main difference between this universe and 616 is that everyone looks different because they're being imagined by a child. Lots of the events and everything remain the same as they are simply stories being passed through the generations. The Magneto of Earth 1191 seems to have the same backstory and powers as the Magneto of 616. It is time to start monkeying around because Ape Magneto is on the scene. It's Earth 8101 and most of the heroes and villains here are apes. Ape Nito has the same costume as 616 Magneto and it looks like the same powers. The biggest, possibly only difference between the two is that one is a few steps behind in its evolution. Ape Nito really isn't in the comics a lot, but he is there just enough that you clock his presence. He was featured in a big battle where the Ape Avengers, Ape X-Men, and Ape Fantastic Four were all trying to defeat the Ape Beyonder. It appears that Ape Nito and Magneto 616 share similar, if not the exact same power set. With all the antics Magneto gets up to, it's only a matter of time before he became a court jester. Magneto has done a lot of bad things, yet I almost feel bad for him in this situation. The Earth is 9997 from the Earth X comic. This Magneto shares a very similar past with 616 Magneto, but this Magneto has a very different future. The part of note that caught my eye, and is the reason that this Magneto made it on the list, is because Magneto became a jester. It happened during the Universe X moment. Galactus destroyed the celestial embryo that was growing inside the Earth. That, of course, messed the Earth up. Vibranium was shifting around and it made the Earth's poles shift. Somehow, because of the pole shifting, Magneto and Toad switch powers, so now Toad is one of the most powerful mutants ever, and Magneto is left to suffer to his every whim. Toad made Magneto his jester and treated him the way Magneto treated Toad, so Toad is coming from somewhere with his actions. Magneto's powers were eventually restored, and he shockingly forgave Toad. This Magneto is stronger than 616's Magneto simply because he's older and has had more time to get stronger. Magneto was once Enrique. This was the Marvel 1602 story where time travel gone wrong caused our X-Men to exist in the 17th century instead of the 21st century. So everyone has new names, not just Magneto. How we get Enrique from Magneto, or even Max, unclear, but this is taking place during the Spanish Inquisition, so that probably has something to do with it. Magneto 616 is Jewish, but this Magneto was taken as a kid and baptized against his will into the Catholic Church and then kept there and raised there. In this world, mutants are called witch breeds, and so the usual elimination methods used during the Spanish Inquisition are used on the witch breeds. Every major thing that happens in the original plot happens here, just with a historical twist. 17th century Magneto became the Grand Inquisitor at his church, and he was responsible for targeting witch breeds, but if a witch breed blended in, he would kind of just turn the other cheek, like with his kids in this universe. Of course, Enrique does get found out for his witch breed status and then escapes to America. Enrique has all the same powers of 616 Magneto, but he also has a leg up on him. He has a sick beard. Marvel 1602 or Earth 311 is truly the gift that keeps on giving. I don't know what it is about modern heroes and old-timey outfits, but I love it and I want more. The Magneto of 8311 goes by Nagneto and is also a horse. It's the Spider-Ham comics. It would be weirder if something normal happened. Nagneto appears in the backup comic Iron Mouse in Peter Porker, The Spectacular Spider-Ham 3. Nagneto was a half-hour late returning his tape to the video store. The comic was released in the 80s, so those still existed. But because he was late, he was charged a late fee of $5, which he was not happy about at all. In all fairness, that would be a $14.50 charge today. As revenge, Magneto uses his animal magnetism powers to erase the tapes in the store, effectively destroying the shop owner's business. Magneto almost got the Lawrence Elk tapes though, and that did not sit well with an old lady nearby, so she smacked him into a concussion with her umbrella. Magneto disappeared for over 3 decades, then reappeared in 2020 in Spider-Ham 3 in the background of one of the big battles. Just when you thought you've seen it all, Marvel throws Monkey Scott Summers into the mix. Sherlock Holmes better watch out because Detective Cyclops is coming for his gig. X-Men Ghost Boxes gave us the gift of Detective Cyclops in 2008. Hailing from Earth 889, this Cyclops is part of a pre-digital culture. He is still protecting the Earth from other dimension threats. This time, the threat is extra-dimensional mutants that have targeted Earth for annexation. Cyclops is part of the X Society, and they are basically the X-Men. They are the protectors of the Earth. Overall, the world looks super cool and vintage, and I absolutely would choose to live there. The art style is really cool, the story seems interesting, plus the characters are all detectives. Like, what more could you want? What the X Society is investigating here is the intentional passing of a mutant from possibly another universe. Scott is a pretty major player in the short series. At the start of the second comic, he goes on a big, introspective, slightly emotional, depressing, reflective monologue called The Last Testament of Scott Summers. Is Cyclops really still a Cyclops if you replace every piece of him? Remember that thought experiment they brought up in WandaVision, Theseus' paradox? Well, that was Cyclops the X-Sentinel. Earth 1011 exists in the X-Men Millennial Visions. What business do I have bringing up the Theseus thing though? In the comic, it's like a page-long explanation of what's happening and then a big picture of what they just explained. There is a photo of the main X-Men. The attached essay to that picture claims that as the X-Men got older, it was harder for them to heal from battle wounds, but they still wanted to fight and protect the Earth. So they started replacing the parts of themselves too hurt to carry on. Like the blur breeds, a lower leg or arm is too damaged, no big deal, we'll just replace it. They even downloaded their consciousness into the cybernetic bodies so they could fight forever. Their signature looks were kept so the public knew who was fighting for them, only of course it went wrong. The cybernetic sentinels started breaking down due to an overload of info in their brains and began focusing on their single goal goal: saving mutant kind. Any threat to mutant kind, even people, had to be eliminated. Is Cyclops still Cyclops if every piece of him is eventually replaced? I think not, but let me know what you think down below. There was once a Cyclops that worked under the Professor X that became Juggernaut. He existed on Earth 905 from Marvel's What If 13. This universe looked pretty bleak for humans. Professor X turning into the Juggernaut caused this whole chain of horrible reactions that led to the Professor crawling out of the rock, a Supreme Control peacemaker. Mutants ran everything, and humans spent their lives pretty much just living in fear. The Cyclops in this world is married to Jean with 3 kids, and he is still the kind of guy to stand up for all things right and good. So he realizes that humans shouldn't have to live like this, and leaves the Professor Juggernaut's X-Men. So the powers, morals, and love life are pretty much the same as the Scott we know, but this Scott has a different helmet. Instead of the sleek helmet we are used to, he has a bigger one with these like horn looking things. The Cyclops and X-Men go up against the Professor Juggernaut X-Men and win. Juggernaut gets literally launched into space. There is a reality where everything is the same, but all mutants are of African American descent, including Cyclops. It's Earth 63 and it's super new. It was dreamed up in 2023's Bishop War College. Lucas Bishop accidentally ended up on Earth 63. He gets transported straight to the front gates of Earth 63's School for Gifted Youngsters and remarks that he had seen it all, but was even shocked by the sight in front of him. Scott Summers and Jean Grey are standing right in front of him, and their outfits are very similar to what they usually wear. They just have Wakandan design influences. As far as I can tell, the only difference between this Cyclops and our Cyclops is their history. Otherwise, it's the same powers and everything like that. Cyclops was once on a Deadpool-led team of X-Men. This version of Cyclops was glimpsed in Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe issue 4. When Deadpool is jumping around through the Nexus of all realities, we see a bunch of different Deadpool variations. One of them is a Professor X-Pool. Professor X-Pool is flanked by Cyclops and Iceman. I don't really want to imagine the implications of combining Professor X and Deadpool, but Cyclops in this universe looks almost exactly the same. The one difference is his super costume is showing a bit more skin. He almost looks like he's wearing a tank top, and I wonder if Deadpool had anything to do with that. There is a Scott Summers out there known as Psych. He comes from the year 2000, originating in the Big Town comics. This world is known as Earth 110. In this universe, Summers presumably has all the same powers. He is still seen wearing his visor. His outfit looks a bit different. It has what looks like a V on the chest and some enormous shoulder pads. Psych was part of a gang of mutant thugs called the Mutts. They worked out of and controlled Newark, New Jersey. On Earth 616, Professor X and Cyclops are super close. The Professor is like a father to Cyclops. They are a super important relationship in the comics. However, in fact, on Earth 110, they are more likely to scrap with each other. The Mutts often fight with the X Squad. They did fight alongside them once out of necessity when Doctor Doom attacked. After the allyship was over and Doctor Doom was defeated, the Mutts were offered the opportunity to join the super team, the X Squad. However, they refused. There's a Cyclops out there with his eyes positioned vertically instead of horizontally. The first issue of Howard the Duck Volume 6 showed a brief appearance of Cyclops, but he looked a little different. His visor was vertical instead of horizontal. That implies that his eyes were vertical instead of horizontal. We don't know if this is just another mutation that Cyclops has and he's the only one, or if everyone in his world has it. We only see him. In the panel where we see him, this guy opens a wizard portal that shows a bunch of different universes. So we also see an evil Squirrel Girl, a Spider-Gwen Batman, Scraggly Captain America, and Duck Iron Man. This Cyclops doesn't have a known universe designation because he's only been seen that one random time. Marvel gave us the gift of an Elizabethan Cyclops. His name is amazing. It is Scotius Summerisle, and he is a witch breed. This takes place in 2003's Marvel 1602. The entire comic takes place in the last bit of the era, and literally everybody is there. I love it when Marvel writers have fun. The backstory for Scotius is that he worked on boats as a kid until his witch breed status was revealed. When that was found out, he wasn't treated very well, but before anything permanent happened, Scotius was found by Carlos Javier to go to his school. Also, Professor Carlos calls the team his mutantor. Iconic. He still met Jean Grey and fell in love with her, but she had to pretend to be a man. It was a whole thing, don't ask. On a mission, Scotius and Roberto, or Iceman, save Angel from the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition. In this world, Scotius doesn't really have a visor. It's more just like a pair of cool sunglasses. Overall, I gave them a 10 out of 10, especially Scottius Summerisle. Cyclops looks like a prince already, and he actually was one once. In Uncanny X-Men 153, or Kitty's Fairy Tale, Cyclops plays the noble prince in the story Kitty Concocts. It's a fitting role for the X-Men. He rules over a faraway land and was set to marry none other than the enchanted princess Jean Grey. But then the kingdom was under attack, and Jean allied herself with the primal cosmic forces to save the city, but they made her turn evil, turn into the Dark Phoenix. It started slowly, but eventually the once gentle princess became evil and cursed her friend and fiance. In this world, Jean gave Scott his eyes of death, as they are called there. The prince and wizard Xavier fled the kingdom together, the wizard giving the prince his fancy blindfold. The pair continued to track the evil princess. Their mistake, she attacked them once they found her, or she found them. The other members of the X-Men get picked up along the way. There is a big final battle like all the X-Men comics have, and then Jean Grey's pure soul takes over, returning the evil Dark Phoenix soul to the primal energies of the cosmos. When the Phoenix is gone, Cyclops' eyes return to normal, him and Jean get married finally, and they all lived happily ever after. The Monkeyverse is Earth 8101. It's apparently very similar to Earth 616, aside from all the monkeys. Monkey Cyclops is on the X-Simians. They fought the Beyonder to make this already wild world even wilder. There were vampire invaders at one point, and Monkey Cyclops had to help fight them off. He did so using all the same powers that 616 Cyclops has access to. The Monkeyverse has only shown up a handful of times, mainly in Marvel Apes volumes, which is unsurprising to say the least. I think Monkey Cyclops looks pretty interesting, and I would love to see more of him.
Number 10, Age of X. There isn't really an exact X-Men team in this reality, but there are the Force Warriors, so I guess we could consider them as an X-Men alternate? In Age of X, we learn of Earth 11326. Here, there was no Professor Xavier to bring mutants together, uniting them. As a result, anti-mutant sentiments grew, and following the Phoenix disaster, mutants were on the brink of extinction in the US, thanks to national and honestly global persecution. However, some were able to rise up and join the Mutant Liberation Front, fighting to protect their kind. Eventually, the mutants were unified by Magneto, who brought them together at a place he built called Fortress X. During the siege of the fortress, each night barriers protecting the place would be rebuilt by the Force Warriors, a team of psionic mutant powerhouses including Legion, Hellion, Betsy Braddock's Psylocke, Carmela Unnasion's Standoff, and finally, Rachel Summers' Revenant. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about alternate versions of alternate characters, well guess what? We got a whole playlist filled with that, so you can go check that out and learn even more. Number 9, Witchbreed. The Witchbreed hails from Earth 311. They are mutants of that reality. Witchbreed is a term given to anyone who basically kind of has powers in that reality, but while some of these characters are villains, not all of them are bad. In fact, the Witchbreed team is made up of mutants who attempt to help others, who are good, and yet who are mistreated just because of who they are, like them. The Earth 311 reality is known as 1602, named after the year it's set in. The team here is led by Carlos Javier, and members include the Angel, Hal McCoy, Petro, Sister Wanda, Scottius Summerisle, Roberto Trefusis, and Jean Grey, who is disguised as a boy and going by John Grey. Number 8, Hellions. Okay, so this one isn't technically an alternate version of the X-Men, but they are from the main continuity. But even discounting that, because I have talked about main reality alternate versions of the X-Men in the past and included them on my list, counting them according to my own self-defined parameters for the list, this team also isn't technically a version of the X-Men specifically. They're just a different mutant group in the main continuity, but I love them so much, and they are a mutant team, and they certainly can be scary if you get on their bad side. Hellions is a team that was made up of those mutants that Krakoa didn't quite know what to do with, considering them too troublesome to deal with. As such, Mr. Sinister suggested that they band these problematic, less stable mutants together, petitioning to have them as his own team that he could then rehabilitate. Use! Under the leadership of Quanon, who goes by Psylocke, herself considered a somewhat problematic mutant due to her past and her weird connection for many years with Betsy Braddock, who is now Captain Britain. This team is probably one of my favorite mutant teams I have ever read in the comics, and despite them all kind of being scarily unhinged at the start, I came to love every single member of this team by the end of this series. This version of the Hellions includes Wild Child, Orphan Maker, Nanny, John Greycrow, Havoc, and a former member of Emma Frost's Hellions, Empath. Number 7, Naughty X-Men. I don't know, just the idea that this team exists out there in the multiverse kinda scares me. It's not so much that these X-Men were created to be a sexy variant, it's more that they hail from the bizarre world of the Mojoverse. But also, think of the ratings! Initially, I of course thought that Mojo had created them solely for that purpose, but apparently he did not. They were simply an alternate version of the team that auditioned to replace the Earth 616 team after they seemingly died. Even Mojo wasn't feeling it and ordered them to be dumped, likely implying that they should be permanently removed after they auditioned for him. Number 6, Marvel Zombies. What makes the Marvel Zombies reality version of the X-Men so scary? How about the fact that most of them were killed off and those that did survive became bloodthirsty zombies? I think the idea of that should be enough to make your blood run cold. Marvel Zombies is a brutal reality known as Earth Z or Earth 2149. While we don't know much about what this world was like before the zombies arrived, it's expected that for the most part it was pretty similar to Earth 616, except for a few minor differences as far as I can tell. The X-Men end up getting attacked early on by Alpha Flight, and those members of the team that survive then go on to fight alongside one of the last standing mutants of the living, Magneto, who becomes sort of like their new leader in this reality. Also, I gotta say, you know you're in some bleak reality when Magneto becomes the leader of the X-Men. I feel like I have yet to see a reality where he leads the X-Men that is without some extreme element of darkness, other than of course the main continuity. Number 5, Dark Reign. During the Dark Reign event, we didn't just have a Dark Avengers team. We also had a Dark X-Men team as well. Dark Reign was an event that happened in 2009. It followed Secret Invasion. After Norman Osborn was broadcast on live television taking up the threat of the Skrull Queen, Varanki, who led the Skrull invasion of Earth, Norman was celebrated as a hero. Surprised? I know. He was made the head of the organization created to replace S.H.I.E.L.D., which at this time was fully debunked. Norman named his organization Hammer and created his own Dark Avengers team. As with his Dark Avengers team, the Dark X-Men team members were also selected by Osborn, for the most part anyway. The team included Mystique, Emma Frost, who was Black Queen at the time, Namor, Dawkins Wolverine, Mimic, Omega, Cloak, and Dagger, who have both been, I think, disputed mutants in the past, and the alternate version of Hank McCoy, known as Dark Beast, who hails from the Age of Apocalypse reality. Number 4, New Dark X-Men. Madeline Pryor leads this new team of Dark X-Men. The team was put together by her when she felt compelled to take action. As Madeline says to Havoc in issue number 1 of Dark X-Men, "You should know by now that I'll wage war against anyone if I think it's just." Donning her new Crown of Mercy. Yep, Maddie gets her own team of X-Men in the second volume of Dark X-Men, which began just this year in 2023. As of issue number 2, the team has grown to include Havoc, Gambit, Maggot, Azazel, Monet's brother Marius St. Croix as M-Plate, New Mutant Feint from Children of the Atom, where she was formerly introduced as Gimmick, and Zero, who actually possesses Wolverine's android clone, Albert. What a weird, wacky series. I really need to add this one to my reading list. Sounds great to me. Number 3, Gamma Earth. The fate of the X-Men here was tragic, hence why I'm including them here on my list. They hail from the reality we get a glimpse into in Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley's Hulk series from 2021, and it's issue number 5. Here we get to see what a future world is like after it has been fully gamma irradiated thanks to gamma bombs that went off the world over. This is because in this reality, Banner was able to test the bomb, not needing to actually save Rick Jones. As such, the bomb testing continued to the point that the weapon was perfected, handed over to the US military. They used it to do things like wipe out all mutants, considering them a threat. Yikes. Number 2, Reichsmen. The Reichsmen come from a world where Germany and Axis won during World War II. They made their first appearance in Excalibur Weird War 3, issue number 1, and they are about as weird and disturbing as you would imagine them to be. This reality, Earth 597, is also home to the disturbing alternate version of the Excalibur team known as the Lightning Force. The Reichsmen are led by Herr Moira McTaggart, Reichsminister of Genetics, with the team including alternate versions of Havoc, Psylocke, Rogue, Storm, and Banshee. Number 1, Days of Future Past. This X-Men team did not fare so well, so they literally reached back into the past to get help so that their future could be prevented from ever coming to pass. In this reality, known as Days of Future Past, named after the story it appears in, or as designated reality number Earth 811, mutants end up being hunted down by Sentinels who take over. Not only are the X-Men almost all gone or dead or otherwise locked up and contained for being mutants, as well as all of the mutant population, stripped of their rights and freedoms, but non-mutant superheroes superheroes were also wiped out as well. It's truly a bleak reality. This team of X-Men is able to get a message back to their past selves thanks to the help of Wolverine, who breaks them out, giving Rachel Summers and Kitty Pryde in this timeline enough cover for Kitty to travel back in time through her own consciousness.